Begin. No.
Hey, good to go. And welcome to Meetup number 134 for February 2024, Melbourne AWS Users Group. Hope that's what you're here for, because if you're here for something else, you're in the wrong room. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather tonight and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So, welcome to the AWS User Group. For those of you who have not been here before, I am Matt, that is Rob, that is Jason standing up the back of the room. We are the organisers. Feel free to come and have a chat to us at any point in time over the course of the evening. The point of these meetups is to have a collaborative sharing of knowledge, right? We want this to be an open and friendly place and enjoyable to all. And with that in mind, we do have a little bit of a code of conduct in place. Full code of conduct is available on the website. It is code-of-conduct. Just forgive the video at the end there. The TLDR is pretty simple. Be nice to people. Treat people the way you want to be treated, all that sort of stuff. If you have any concerns about this, please come and see one of us, either after the event, or feel free to reach out to us on Slack. AWS User Group is available on the web. As Rob mentioned before, we do stream on YouTube. All of our past meetups or most of our past meetups are available on YouTube as well. We're also available on LinkedIn and Mastodon at the awscommunity.social. We do not do X anymore because, who uses that? Right, tonight's session, 6:30, introductions. You get me. Aren't you all lucky? Yay. 6:40, we will go through what's new. Not after reInvent, probably should have deleted that. Well, I guess it is technically after reInvent, but that's less relevant now. What's happened since the end of January? TLDR on that one is not a lot. Then we've got Hilton presenting on building end-to-end generative AI agents with Bedrock, followed up by Jason on AWS Party Rock and other stuff. I believe there is an interactive component to that session, so hang around to the end there where we'll get to build some fun stuff together. Following that, we'll head into the marketplace. Again, for those who haven't been here before, welcome. And also, it's a little bit of an opportunity for anybody who's currently looking to hire people to raise your hand. We'll have a little bit of a chat about what the role is, those sorts of things, so that people can sort of link up with you after the end. We used to do a hands up if you were looking for work, but that became a little bit awkward if your boss happened to be sitting next to you. So we don't do that anymore. and then we should all be wrapped up by 8 o'clock. Unfortunately, it is still meant to be quite hot outside at 8 o'clock, so bottled water at the back of the room for anybody feeling thirsty. Ask any questions as we go through the night. If you're in the room, raise your hand. At the end of the sessions, we'll get a microphone to you. If you are watching the live stream at home, hi. And feel free to reach out to us either in YouTube chat or on Slack in the #Melbourne channel. Yes, as a part of that, we would like to, these things don't just happen. They take a lot of work to put these nights on, and we couldn't do that without the help of our wonderful sponsors. Our gold sponsor for 2024 is Mantel Group. So we'd like to thank them, and our silver sponsors at the moment are Sevo, and come and talk to me if you'd like to be the second logo on that page. More than happy to talk to you. Also, wouldn't be a night without thanking our venue sponsor, NAB, for letting us use their wonderful location and audio-video equipment. So thank you to them for their continued support over the course of the year. As mentioned before, we're on a thing called Slack, awsusergroup.org.au/Slack. A couple of channels on there. Obviously, it gets pretty active during AWS outage windows, so feel free. Is it just me or is it down? AWS outages channel usually a pretty good place to go and stick your head in and go, yep, no, it's not just me. Cool. A lot of people there. If you've got any sort of questions, queries, concerns, thoughts, I think we're up over 1,000 users. Well, up over 1,000 users now. So if you haven't already joined, come along, say hi in the general channel. A good place to get info on what's happening in the event and also just AWS in general. For those of you who would like to get involved, if hosting a meetup or being a part of a meetup is something that you would like in your life, please feel free to, again, come and see one of the organisers at the end of the night. More than happy to talk to you. Speakers. We are always looking for speakers. 2 speakers a night times 11 meetups a year is about 22 sponsors a year. 22 speakers a year that we need to find. So if you have any ideas for topics that you want to talk about, experiences that you've had, please feel free to reach out. If you've never spoken before and want to build up your public speaking skill set, again, reach out. More than happy to work with you. A lot of the members of the organising committee are pretty well seasoned public speakers. We've all been through it. And the wider group on Slack, there's a number of AWS ambassadors, community builders, AWS heroes that can help craft the content, help you with your presentation, help you with your public speaking, any of those sorts of things. So don't feel that you need to be a 10x developer or something to come up and speak up here. It can be anybody covering any topic to do with AWS. Sponsors, as I mentioned before, we're still sort of looking for a sponsor for the year, so if you think that might be you or your employer or your company, feel free to come and talk to us. And then volunteers, if you want to get involved on the actual night, helping set up the food, the drink, laying the chairs out, that sort of stuff, come and talk to us. There's always a few things that we could do with a hand with, particularly at the moment, anybody with graphic design skills that sitting around not doing anything and itching to do some work. We have a website that would like some love. We have some material that would love some love. Somebody who's got better Photoshop skills than I would be greatly appreciated. We are not obviously the only game in town when it comes to AWS. There's a lot going on in the AWS space at the moment, including Sydney Summit. Tickets for that opened, I believe it's a week and a half ago, and I believe they're still available. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. 10th, 11th in Sydney, Darling Harbour at the Convention Centre. Free registration, jump on the AWS website, have a go. Tickets did go pretty quickly last year. I'm assuming they've upped the capacity for this year. Also coming up next month in March is the Programmables Melbourne conference. Grand Hyatt Melbourne on the 19th. So a lot of good speakers, a lot of interesting topics being covered on that one, and attendees of the Melbourne AWS User Group get a 10% off code. So feel free to grab yourself a ticket. We also have the Serverless Meetup up at the Mantel Group office next Thursday at 5:30, level 2 at 452 Flinders Street in Melbourne, down the other end near the, pretty much across the road from the aquarium. I can't remember what the topic for that one is. I'm sure it's something serverless related, I would assume. And with that, we can get into the What's New for AWS segment. Usually somebody else will come and up on stage and do the thing, but you guys are so lucky tonight that you get me to do this as well, because there's not actually that much of it, and I didn't want to have to drag somebody else up here. First things first, what did Melbourne get this month? We can now send SMSs from the Melbourne region. Woo! It would be a bigger deal if we couldn't already do it from Sydney using a 6.1 prefix, so it's not like super amazing, but hey, you know, if you've already got your workload in Melbourne now, you can use SNS to send an SMS straight away, say that one 10 times quickly. For our friends up in Sydney, they got nothing. Sydney got no love. So, yeah, also yay. Yeah. Databases. It looks like there's a lot that happened in the databases world, but when you then very quickly realize that most of those are document DB updates, so it's a lot less interesting. Multi-AZ deployments with 2 readable standbys now supports general purpose GP3 storage volumes for RDS. For those who don't remember, they increased the number of standby readable standbys that you could have. That's now available on the other storage tier. So yay if you're running GP3s in your multi-AZ RDS instance with multiple readable standbys, because versioning and instance sizing on RDS wasn't complicated enough already. Document DB. Elastic Cluster supports readable seconds with stop starts for the clusters, automated backups, snapshot copying, and partial indexing. For those people who know MongoDB, I'm sure a lot of that will make sense to you. For me, that just sounds like a bunch of buzzwords. And then Neptune. Is anybody actually using Neptune in the room? Yep, that's about as many people as I thought. Neptune, I/O optimized storage, now available. There you go. If you've been looking for a reason to use Neptune, want a faster storage, there it is. Data, a little bit different in the data space. MSK now supports in-place versioning for tiered storage. You can see why that might be useful. Amazon Data Firehose, not a new service. It's just the renamed version of Kinesis Data Firehose. So you'll start seeing Data Firehose everywhere. Just think Kinesis Firehose, because we're going through and renaming everything now. Speaking of which, Data Firehose enables selecting time zone for bucket prefixes when delivering streams to S3. For those of you who haven't done round the globe solution architectures where you've got to worry about things like time zones and all of that sort of stuff, yeah, you may not have run into the problem that can cause, but it's a real pain in the butt at times. So that will hopefully make life a little bit easier for people. Batch now supports private registry for ECS compute environments. Again, another one of those things that isn't really a big deal for you until you've tried to use Batch in a private environment. If you have, you'll probably be jumping for joy over this one. EMR on EC2 now supports retrieval of 10,000 steps completed within the last 7 days. Yeah, I was scratching the bottom of the barrel. The AI that generates these slides for me only had like 3 things, and I had to go back and add a couple extras because it was really scant pickings this month. And then Glue Data Catalog now supports delegating KMS key permissions to an IAM role. That one's actually kind of useful. I was a little bummed that the AI didn't actually pick that one up as a topic, but yeah, so more IAM role capability for Glue. Everything should live in IAM. For containers, this pretty much sums up just how exciting a month it's been. Fargate announces price reduction for Windows containers on ECS. Look, if you're one of the unlucky people who have to run Windows in a container, your finance team's going to be happier. A price, like, it's a pretty significant price reduction. I can't remember the exact number, but it was like 40-something%, so like it's not an insignificant amount of money. But for anybody who's run Windows containers, you know they're not cheap to begin with, so 40% of a big number is still a big number. But hey, any price drop is a good price drop. Announcing disruption controls for Carpenter. For those in the EKS space, if you're running Carpenter, that will be a joy for you. For those of you who have been here before, you know that Kubernetes is not for me. My stance on that one's pretty well clear and well documented. In the machine learning space, Amazon Bedrock console gets a modern look and feel because, yeah, it's been a service for 5 months, so time to change the UI. Yeah. Accelerate machine learning model training with Amazon SageMaker and S3 Express One Zone. Expect a lot of these over the coming months. I think this Express One Zone is going to be worked into a lot of services in the coming months. So this is just the first of what I will assume is many. In the serverless space, Lambda, .NET 8. Yay, if you're a .NET developer. API Gateway now supports TLS 1.3 for the security people in the room. That's probably about time. And for everybody else, it's like, yeah, cool. And AppSync now supports environment variables in GraphQL, resolvers, and functions. That one's a biggie. That makes multi-environment deployments of AppSync a lot less painful. There's a lot of flexibility that's going to provide people. It's going to introduce a lot of pain points in a couple of months as people start finding the gotchas and getting themselves tied up in environment variable soup, but that goes with anything. Security space, WAF now supports rule match details for regex rules. Another one of those, flexibility is great, just be careful with it, things. Guard Duty malware protection now supports scanning EBS managed key encrypted volumes. This is another one of those things that, you know, if you've been doing malware protection, great, fantastic. If you haven't run into trying to do it with a managed key environment, you probably didn't know that it wasn't a thing. For those of you who have tried, congratulations, it's now available. And Guard Duty runtime monitoring protects clusters running in a shared VPC environment. So more functionality for Guard Duty, yay, yay, yay. Storage, again, another one of those things. It's just transit family, transit family, transit family. Not anything particularly exciting. Publishes events to Amazon Event Bridge for SFTP, FTPS, and FTP servers. So a lot more visibility into your Event Bridge environment. Event Bridge for SFTP connections, connectors, I should say, as opposed to servers. And Event Bridge for AS2 servers and connectors. So basically, transfer family, Event Bridge, lots of stuff going on there. On the Devon Ops side, this is where a bunch of stuff did actually happen. CloudWatch Logs now supports IPv6. Yay. Systems Manager Parameter Store now supports cross-account sharing. This one is probably the big announcement of the month. It's not a particularly exciting one, but if anybody's tried to do mass parameter sharing across multiple accounts, you've probably been using Secrets Manager or some kind of pipeline to deploy the same parameter into 47 different accounts. This now gives you the ability to go with different architectures. Always a nice thing. Resilience Hub is now PCI compliant. Again, one of those things that you don't care about until it comes time for the PCI audit. Amplify hosting, because anybody using Amplify hosting as opposed to Amplify? Yeah, a couple of people. Amplify hosting now supports custom SSL certificates and TLS. Yay. Pull request approval rules in Amazon Code Catalyst. If you haven't looked at Code Catalyst, might be worth a look. It is a not unintriguing offering, despite the fact that it's not in the AWS Management Console. So kind of a weird one on that front. Control Tower introduces APIs for registering organizational units. I will leave that one for another day when Dawn is here giving one of her talks on Control Tower. But there is potential for some interesting nuance there around doing things like migrations and all of those sorts of bits and pieces. Code pipeline supports additional trigger filters for execution modes. Code pipelines have been getting a lot of love the last couple of months. It's actually becoming useful, or useful-er, I might say. Gone are the days where the only way you can trigger it is to do a push to the branch. There's a lot more trigger options, there's a lot more flexibility and a lot more ways to define particular states. So if you looked at that a couple of years ago and went, yeah, why would I use this when I've got 1,001 other more flexible options? Now might be a time to go back and have a squiz. And CloudWatch Synthetics releases Node, JS, Puppeteer runtime versions for Selenium and all of the other, Puppeteer and bits and pieces. So Synthetics is your runtime or end user environment behavior testing and monitoring. So a lot of interesting ways there to now do UI testing and have your results feed straight back into your CloudWatch. So you can do event-based triggers and all of those sorts of bits and pieces, treat it the same way you would any other logs coming into your CloudWatch environment. Other cool stuff, new regions, cool. Resource Explorer, these look old. This is an old slide. I don't know what happened there, but that's not the stuff that's supposed to be on that slide. I think I've stuffed up somewhere. The only real one on the other cool stuff that I can recall that was of any use, for anybody who's a partner in the room, you might care about the fact that you can now tag multiple opportunities against an ACE submission. So if you're not a partner, you probably don't care at all. If you are a partner, a lot of flexibility and interesting things there around financing and credits and those sorts of things. It's been a little bit of a bugbear for partners for a while now. So you can now tag multiple opportunities. For everybody else who's not a partner, all of that would have just been complete gobbledygook and made absolutely no sense. And with that, I am done. I am going to hand over to Hilton and I will be back at the end to facilitate the rest of the night.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Whoop, got to stay here in front of the microphone. Okay. My name's Hilton Rosenfeld. I am a solutions engineer working with DataStax, as the shirt says. I have a couple of colleagues in the room. I've got my sales executive, Hugh, down here, and another one of our team at the back there. We've got Jonathan, who, if you have any questions afterwards, I unfortunately have to bugger off very quickly to get a flight back to Sydney, and they will stick around and answer any questions. But what I want to talk about today is Bedrock, Amazon Bedrock. Anyone here used Bedrock before? You guys down the back, I expect you to be using it. Everyone else, you will after tonight. And building a Gen AI agent. Has anyone here done any development towards generative AI applications? Yep. Down the back, thank you. Well, let's get stuck in then. What I'm going to cover today, I'm going to talk about what we call at DataStax the rise of the AI knowledge app, generative AI agents. We're going to have a little look at Amazon Bedrock. I'm going to do a live demo for you so you can see it. And we're going to talk about this concept of context as it relates to generative AI applications, and a process called retrieval augmented generation, RAG, which is how we bring context to Gen AI apps. And then I'll just finish off a little bit about the partnership that exists between DataStax and AWS. Please feel free to stop me for questions along the way. Anyone experienced this? We're using Gen AI to talk to Gen AI. You know, in the end, the agents are going to be doing all the work for us. Not likely. They're just not smart enough yet. This one's a little bit more realistic, because everyone I talk to amongst my customers has got this bottom right-hand corner happening. What do we know for sure? That we want to adopt it everywhere as fast as we can. Does that ring true for anyone here in their businesses? A lot of nodding heads. Yep. Everyone wants Gen AI, and they want it now. What we're seeing at DataStax amongst our customers is generative AI apps fall into two areas: creative apps and knowledge apps. Good examples of creative apps are Midjourney or DALL-E, apps that create image and video content. The other side is knowledge management, using generative AI to manage knowledge, such as GitHub Copilot. Who uses GitHub Copilot? All right. So it's helping you manage knowledge, in this case with code. Or Glean, which helps you search and find meaning in your content. Other examples of knowledge apps: everyone today wants to build a generative AI chatbot, or a way to summarize documents, or a way to improve their search. These are all what we call AI knowledge apps. A little bit about Bedrock. We're going to switch to some AWS icons here. So, you know, AI has come a long way in the last few years, especially in the last year. You know, up until a year and a half ago, AI meant predictive AI, machine learning. I was here about 6-8 months ago talking about machine learning with DataStax. Now everyone's talking about generative AI. But AWS support through tools like data science, machine learning tools, natural language processing tools, deep learning tools for training your models. All of these, it's a huge collection of services, but what's new is now the generative AI tools. And amongst those is Bedrock. So this brings us to talk about Bedrock. So what is Bedrock? Something's happening up there, that's for sure. The aircon, okay. So Bedrock, Amazon Bedrock. Do we all know what a large language model is? Yes? Let me reverse that question. Anyone not know what a large language model is? All right. So the large language model, the one that everyone came to know first was ChatGPT, right? Where you could have a natural language conversation with a chatbot, an agent, and it would respond to you almost like a human. It understood language. By the way, just to be clear, ChatGPT is not a large language model. It's a chat application that leverages a large language model behind it. The large language model is called GPT, just to be clear. So large language models, there's a lot of them. OpenAI has GPT 3.5, GPT 4, GPT 4 Turbo Preview, lots of different models. And then there's a plethora of other models. Google has a model called Gemini. Amazon has a model called Titan. And there's a bunch of open source models available as well. But what's really hard is to run that model. You need a lot of compute power, GPUs. Does anyone here own NVIDIA stock? NVIDIA stock? No? We all missed out. Oh well. So Bedrock is the easiest way for you to leverage a large language model without running your own large language model. It essentially allows you to choose which large language model you want to work with from the ones I've listed at the bottom there, and you access it just through code, through an API. So what I want to do is show you what it looks like. So here we have Bedrock. I've just logged into my Amazon portal and I've got try Bedrock. All right, let's get started. So here I am inside Bedrock. Just make it a little bigger. And straight away I can see which models, large language models. Now generally large language models, another way to call them is foundation models. And here you can see a variety of foundation models that are available for me to use. One thing I really like about Bedrock is this concept of playgrounds. It's a place that I can go to where I can play with the different models. I can experiment with them. Let's have a look. So I'm now in the chat playground. It's essentially a little environment where I can experiment with something like ChatGPT, for those that have used ChatGPT before. So the first thing we do is we select which model I want to use, and my internet has disconnected. One moment, please. Technical difficulties. All right, so the first thing I do is select the model that I want to use, and like I said, we have a few different models I can use. Now the choice of which model depends on your use case and your budget. It's always, essentially with large language models, you get what you pay for, but sometimes you don't need to pay for the best. So I'm going to choose, for example, Anthropic Claude 2. You can see here we've got Meta. Meta has a model called Llama 2. Anthropic has a couple of Claude models. Amazon has Titan. AI21 has Jurassic. So I'm going to use Anthropic version 2. Select that. And now I can write a prompt. A prompt is just an instruction, a request to the large language model. So I'm going to say, explain what is Astra Vector. Astra Vector, for those that don't know, is a DataStax product it's a vector database. Now, when I run this, let's see what result we get. I need to make this a little smaller. And it's given me something, it's given me a response, just like a large language model does. So this playground allows you to experiment with the prompt and to change the model that you're using at any time. What has it told me? Astra Vector is a vector graphics editor developed by Anthropic. That is not correct. Have we heard of hallucinations with large language models? This is a hallucination. The large language model has given me an answer because it's trying to be helpful, but it's essentially given me the wrong answer. It doesn't have the relevant context. Now in these, I'll come back to that relevant context. In these playgrounds, I can change different settings on the right-hand side, such as temperature. Temperature is a measure of creativity. How creative do you want the large language model to be? If I lower the creativity and ask it the same question, tell me what is Astra Vector? Well, it's given me the same answer, but it's been less creative in its reply. So this playground allows you to experiment. Generally, when you're developing a Gen AI application, You have to engage in prompt engineering, which is writing the instruction to the large language model, and it's very sensitive to the words you use. For example, you can tell it, if you don't know, say I don't know, rather than hallucinate. So you can give it a personality, you can tell it to be helpful, to be rude, you can tell it to talk in French if it's multilingual, you can give it a whole set of instructions, which is the prompt, and then these parameters on the right-hand side define how it behaves as well. So here, this is where you experiment. I really like that. So that's a little bit about Bedrock. But what I want to show you is what happens when we have data that's not in the large language model. I call this section wait, there's more. So generative AI has huge promise. We can build amazing, personalized, tailored content for users. We can create agents that'll do everything for us. Anyone heard of that little product called Rabbit? No? It's a little device that's going to like replace your phones, and it's an AI device the size of your phone, and it just does everything in your life for you. And yeah, incredulous but true. I don't think it's going to have a long life, but that's another story. The other cool thing about AI is about generative AI, is it's moved the work from the realm of data science to the realm of developers. Because all you need to do, and I'll show you this in the code in a moment, all you need to do to build a generative AI application is have a little bit of skill as a developer. Large language models have taken away the need to a large degree for an army of data scientists, because we're not doing machine learning anymore. But there are problems. The large language models are only updated periodically. Can anyone tell me, for example, and I'm going to use an example here from a non-AWS vendor just because I don't know the details for AWS, but OpenAI with their large language model, can anyone tell me when it was last trained? How recent is the data in the model?
2022.
Say again?
22. 22.
22
weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
2022.
Oh, 2022. Sorry, I'm half deaf here. Depends which version. So they've got version 3.5, they've got version 4, and then 4 preview. But yes, not 2021, version 3.5, 2021. So if you ask it a question about something that happened after 2021, it doesn't know. Even the latest one is already 3 months old. So it doesn't have up-to-date data. The other thing they don't have is your data. And frankly, they should not have your data. You don't want to give it your enterprise data, your customer data, sensitive data. You don't want to train these large language models on your data. So we need a way, if I want an application that has access to up-to-date, relevant contextual data, how do I get it there? Well, there's 3 ways. The hardest is to train your own large language model. And if you've got a couple of $100 million to spend on GPUs and data scientists and all of that, go ahead and do it. The other one is to take a foundation model and fine-tune it. You can do that. You can take all the hard work that someone has done in build it, like Meta when they built Llama. You can take Llama and you can extend the training and fine-tune it with your own data. Also, quite difficult, quite expensive, and the worst part about it is because you're training a model still, the data you train it on, your data, is retained inside the model. Not great. To me, the easiest way is to engage in something we call prompt engineering, because the prompt is a good place where I can inject all the relevant context that I need to answer a particular question. I'm going to make this easy to understand through a couple of diagrams. First of all, prompt engineering. Write in the prompt. The prompt is the instruction that I give the large language model. Essentially, it has 3 components. It's got a description of the task, And that is something that you don't see. When you go to a chatbot and you write your question, all you're seeing is what you write. You don't see what the developer included in his code to instruct the large language model on how to behave. That's the task description, and it can be, you are a helpful assistant, you respond in bullet points, you speak the user's language. If you don't know the answer, say you don't know. You can give it a set of instructions. The current input, that's the actual question that the user asks. And then the constraints, these are limitations on how you want it to behave. In what way should it format the response? Should it include images? Should it include a reference to the original data? All of that goes together into that window, this window that I showed you over here, where I'm typing the prompt in the playground. All of that goes here. For example, you are a helpful assistant with 10 years experience in system analysis. Respond in bullet points. I can't type. Speak in French. And then, question. How do I find my name? Good question. And I've given it some extra information. And when I run that, we'll see what it says. Okay, well look, it's responded in French because I told it to respond in French. And it's done it with bullet points. So it obeyed my instructions. I can't read the response, it's not really relevant to us. But what comes to mind is this prompt window is a great place for me to include all of the contextual data that the model was not trained on. The way that looks, and this is where we get to this retrieval augmented generation, RAG. Essentially, I've got the same prompt, but before I submit the prompt, I'm going to have a retrieval step where I retrieve relevant information from a database, information that's relevant to answer the user's question or the task that the LLM has been assigned, inject that into the prompt, and then send it all to the large language model. Okay? So what we do is we retrieve context, we augment the prompt with that contextual information, and then we generate a response with the large language model. Hence the name retrieval augmented generation. Let me show you an example of this working. So we've got a customer called Blue Illusion. Anyone here heard of Blue Illusion? That's the wrong URL. Blue Illusion, they're a fashion label. Obviously, I don't shop there. And they don't do men's clothing, sadly. But they're essentially a shopping label, an Australian brand, and they've got a catalogue of women's clothing. Now, if I want to find something, the new way of shopping is not to search a catalogue. You know, what am I going to do? Click on the image, I'm going to read this description and the product details, and maybe I can make sense of it. Like when you go buy a television, you have to read through all these specifications, and really what I want to do is I want to write a question saying, I want a television that's great for watching sport, I've got a living room that's massive and I need a good sound system with it, what do you recommend? That's the sort of question you want to ask. So what I did is I developed a little application called Welcome to Blue Illusion. This is Blue Illusion's generative AI chatbot that I developed. And I can ask it a question about recommending clothes for me. Granted, it's women's clothes. Any women here today? Yes. All right, represent. Thank you. So what would you ask? What would you want to ask a fashion catalogue for clothing? How would you write a question? Any thoughts? I'm putting you on the spot. Okay, I'll answer for you. Please, it's funny that when we're talking to a computer, we still use the word please. Recommend a dress suitable for business meetings in hot weather. Yeah? You know, that's the sort of query that I want to give to the large language model. Now, because this is going in the background, it's going to talk to Bedrock, I can choose which of the Bedrock models I want to use. In this case, I'm going to choose Claude V2 like we used before, and I'm going to put in the response. So in the background, what's happening? Well, we'll wait for the response, because when the response comes up, everyone's going to stop paying attention to me and read the response. Okay, Claude's going a bit slow today. Thanks, Claude. Okay, we'll come back and look at that in a second. While that's running, let me tell you what's happening. In the background, the application that I developed is issuing a search request to my database where I've stored all of the product description data. But I haven't stored it just as text. I've converted it to vectors, to embeddings, using an embedding model, something else that exists in Bedrock. And in my database, I've stored the text, the equivalent embedding of that text. And embedding is something that gives you a semantic meaning. It tells you the meaning of the words in mathematical notation rather than what the words are themselves. So I can search based on the meaning of words rather than the words. As developers, we're all familiar with keyword search. Select all from table where name like Hilton, right? That's a keyword search. But what about if I want to search for dresses that are good for a summer meeting? That's semantic search. That's what vector search gives you. So we're using vector search to find all the outfits in that catalog that match my request for the outfit. I'm pulling back those little bits of information. I'm injecting those into the prompt and sending that to the large language model. The way that looks is like this. Let's go have a look at the result first. All right, we've got a result. Here's the result based on the product descriptions provided. Now note here, I didn't provide any product descriptions. They came from the vector search, but they are in the prompt. Here are some recommendations for a dress suitable for business meetings in hot weather. It's given me a really nice response. The other cool thing is this is a conversation. It's a chatbot. So I'm just going to change the model to something a little bit more powerful, Llama. And I'm going to say, recommend some shoes to go with that. So in the background, there's a few more things happen here. When you build an app like this, you also need to store in the database a history of the conversation. Because for the follow-up question, I've got to be able to reiterate over the conversation and include all of the history of the conversation in the context for the large language model. So what did we get? Now, look at this response. It's referring back to the previous recommendations. It's got the history of the conversation. That history is stored in the database as well. Okay, that's enough demo time. What I want to do is show you how this works under the hood. Who here is uncomfortable with code? That's my sales guy. Yes. Okay, how much time have I got? 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, so this application, I've written it in Python because I'm that sort of developer. And there's a couple of components in it that are important. Number one, there's a connection to a database. And the database in this case is DataStax's AstraDB, by far the best vector database you can find. You need a vector base to store embeddings. And it's defined very simply as an endpoint, a security token, and I tell it the namespace and which document collection I'm working with, because it's a document store. The other thing we need is to define a large language model. So I've written a little function here that, based on that drop-down menu that I had in the interface, will choose the right language model. So I've made it work with both OpenAI language models and Bedrock models. But for a Bedrock model, essentially, what do I have to give it? Bedrock Chat, that is a module, it's an object that is defined to hold a client to the large language model. All it needs to know is which region the model's running in and what credential profile I want to use in my AWS credential record. I've got a profile called default, which has my key and secret key in it. The model ID, that's the name of the model I'm using. And remember that temperature, how creative we want it to be. I've defined my temperature as 0.1. So that's all I need in code to work with Bedrock. If you're doing Python, it's very similar in other languages. Then, a little bit later on, remember I said we have a prompt? So this is the template for my prompt. Okay? You're a helpful AI assistant tasked to answer the user. You're friendly. You prefer bullet points. Focus on the user's needs and provide the best possible answer. I'm trying to be really descriptive here. Do not include images in your response. You can ask clarifying questions. If you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know, etc., etc. Then I'm telling it, use the following context to answer the question. And I'm dumping the context. That context comes from the vector search that I did on the database. Okay? I'm also getting the chat history from the database and including that, because the large language model, in order to have a conversation with me, needs to know the history of our conversation. And the actual question that I asked, recommend some shoes to go with that. Answer in English, and that becomes the whole prompt. I just want to quickly talk about one other aspect of developing these sort of applications, which is you need to monitor what's going on. You need to have visibility into all the steps that are happening so you can debug it and so that you can monitor the quality of your responses. Okay, this is a big thing with Gen AI apps. Regardless of which model you're using, regardless of which database you're using, how do you know that you're getting the right responses from a large language model? Consistent, repeatable, accurate results. So we use Langsmith as our monitoring solution, and what this allows me to see is a record of all the conversations I've had with the large language model. And you can see here, for example, here's my first question: please recommend a dress suitable for business meetings in summer, and then recommend some shoes to go with it. So if I look at the first one, let's just drill into this. And I can see that the first thing it did was it did a search. It executed a vector search on my database to find the four most relevant documents in the database that it could use to answer my question. And here's one, for example. It found this information in the database. And it's even got some meta information, such as an image URL, the source URL for this page, the price, and some descriptive information. So it found 4 documents, and then it compiled all of that into a prompt. So that the end prompt is what we see down here. Here's the instruction I gave it, and then here's all of the contextual information from the 4 documents that it found, and all of this is the prompt. In fact, if I copied all of that, copy, and pasted it into Bedrock, where's Bedrock? Here's Bedrock. I could paste all of that into the prompt in here, and it would be the equivalent of my application. Does that make sense? Great. So being able to see these results and keep track of it is vital. The other cool thing about this, because it gets expensive, is it will tell me how much each of these calls cost, depending on which large language model you use. Okay, the last thing I want to show, DataStax and AWS have a strong partnership. Try AstraDB for free. If you need a vector database, a place to store your embeddings so that you can build a generative AI application like what I did, without the vector database, it's not going to work. You cannot get that contextual data into the application without a vector database. AstraDB is the way to go. You can get a free account that'll give you 80 gigabytes of data and about 20 million reads and writes recurring every month forever by following that URL. Going the wrong way. The other one, if you want to follow my workshop step by step with a GitHub repository, you can download the lesson and the GitHub repository from that URL. And thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions for Hilton?
Hi. Does the DB have to sit with the large language model, or because the context you copied is very small, it doesn't have all the addresses on the website. How does it find what to suggest?
Okay, so the question is, does the database have to reside with the large language model? Because where's all the context? There's 1,000 products in that catalog. Where is it all? So it's all in AstraDB, and it does not have to reside with the database. When you provision, the vector database that you choose is one entity, and you usually interact with it through an API. The large language model is another entity, and you interact with it through an API. Your code, your agent that you build, your application, makes the calls to each as needed. They do not have to reside together. But to answer your question, where is all the information on all of the addresses stored? It's stored inside AstraDB. So if I log into AstraDB and I look at the database, the vector database where all of that contextual data is, it's all here. And yes, I wrote a little script to crawl the entire Blue Illusions website and download it all and embed it inside this database. So here's the Blue Illusion namespace, here's the catalog, and if I look at each of these records, so here, for example, is the content for one of their products, which is called La Vie Diffuser. It's a perfume, and you can see down the bottom there's even all of the metadata that goes with it, such as the price, the image. It's all stored. All of those records are stored in this database. There's 358 records that I've got in the database. So 358 products are in the database.
They are not part of the problem.
Your application, when the user asks a question, so the process, the RAG process, the user asks a question which gets sent to your application. The application then does a vector search on the database to find the records that best match that question, gets the result and feeds that into the large language model to format the final response.
Got a question from online, from Warren. For those that want to create a portfolio of Gen AI apps to get a job. This is not on. All right. Do you recommend working with a particular framework?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Do you recommend a particular framework for those looking to get into
good question.
Gen AI?
So a particular framework for getting into Gen AI. I think there's two frameworks that stand out. There is LangChain and Llama Index. LangChain and Llama Index are the frameworks that allow you to work with all the large language models, all the embedding engines, all the vector databases. Essentially, they simplify your code. The same way that React totally changed the way we develop websites. LangChain and Llama Index totally changed the way we build Gen AI apps. DataStax also makes available our version of both of those compiled together to work seamlessly, something we call RagStack. Question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you missed a step when you explained the RAG process. So when I put in a question as a user and sends it to my app, wouldn't the app then have to turn that into a vector?
Yes.
Which would
In the
require...
interest of time, I was going simplifying, but let's cover it quickly because the question has come up. Am I okay for time? Yep, okay. So the end-to-end process. It starts with the user on the... So before the user asks any questions, we have to do this step here, vectorization, where I've got to take all of your data, whether it's your website, your PDF collection, your Confluent site, your whatever it is, your collection of data, I've got to put that through a document splitter to chunk it down into chunks, and I've got to pass it through an embedding API, such as Bedrock or Amazon Titan embedding, and that generates the embeddings for each piece of my data, and I've got to store that in the vector database. This is before the application starts running, before it's live. In other words, you've got to create embeddings of all of the documents that you have and store them in a vector database. Step one, done. In the background, of course, we've got to keep that up to date, but step one, done. Now, the application goes live, and a user comes along and asks a question. In this case, I'm calling it prompt, but this is not the prompt. This is the question the user asks. The first thing, it's got to go to the embedding API to create a vector from the question, because when I do the vector search on the vector database, I'm essentially doing something that we call approximate nearest neighbor, where I'm looking for the top K matches of documents that match my question by using vectors. So I need to essentially, I'm doing a search in the database where the vector I've created from my question is the closest match to the vectors I created in the previous step.
Yeah, thanks. That's what I'm getting at. So you have to use the same LLM to...
The same embedding model, yes. The embedding model that you use, so the embedding model and the LLM, two separate models. In the case of Bedrock, Bedrock has Titan embedding model and all of those other large language models that I showed you. They're separate models, right? In the case of OpenAI, they have GPT 3.5 and GPT 4, that's the large language models, and the embedding model is called Text Embedding ADA 002, recently replaced with Text Embedding Large V3. So the embedding model and the large language model are two separate pieces. The embedding model that you use when you create the vectors and when you answer the question must be the same embedding model. The large language model is the last step. Once you get the context back from the vector database, it gets passed to the large language model at the bottom right, and an answer is sent back to the user. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Because you had that drop down where you could select the LLM.
I wasn't showing you the embedding part.
Okay, so does it matter in your experience? Like, are they all similar, or is it?
No, it does matter. Okay, so the question here is, doesn't matter which embedding model I use to create the embedding. It does. And I've got a little thing here I can quickly show you. Bedrock test. So here, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an embedding for you on the fly. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying I want to use the Bedrock embeddings, and I want to create an embedding from this sentence. Yep. Let's see what that looks like. This is what the embedding looks like. It's 1,536 floating point numbers, comma separated. Go figure. Okay, in this talk we can't get into that level of detail, but in the background, whatever your data is, you have to pass it through this process and store that in the vector database. And then when the question comes along, you also create a vector of the question, and you're matching the vectors in the database to the vector of the question, which is called vector search. Look, in the interest of time, because Jason also wants to talk, I'm really glad that we have so many questions. My colleagues, Hugh and Jonathan, are going to stick around, and they will be happy to answer all your questions. Otherwise, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we'll continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
All right, hey everyone. So this was a little presentation that I gave a couple of weeks ago at work for our Back to Base, and thought I would bring it out here and sort of ties in with Hilton's talk on Bedrock. So just going to start off, and I'll go through this section relatively quickly because there's a good bit towards the end. So just start off with, I had a brief overview of what are AWS's AI and ML tools. They've actually got quite a range there. Hilton showed a few there, but it's sort of a mix of like really powerful tools that are designed for data scientists. There's also a lot of tools that have a relatively low entry bar. They generally all tie in with the AWS ecosystem. So if you want to do things like linking, Cognito and the likes, all those things. They've even got a couple of like fun tools as well. So if you have a look at their page, you'll see they've got a whole breadth of solutions for different types of things: application dev, language understanding, ML ops, so code and DevOps type tools, and a huge range of products. in their AI ML space. All right, so what are some of their popular tools? Just to give you a bit of an overview, if you haven't looked, you've got things like SageMaker was sort of their granddaddy. That's for your real sort of deep data scientists doing all your machine learning. Got a lot of other tools like Recognition. They couldn't spell it properly, but that's for your image recognition. And that's one of those sort of low entry bar tools where you can, do stuff, have a whole bunch of photos, run it through Recognition, do some training. A mate of mine, he works for AWS, but he got married a couple of years ago and decided, hey, I'll build a little website. I think he used Amplify for that. He used Cognito to do the authentication, but chucked all of his wedding photos into an S3 bucket, ran it through Recognition, and then put his little website, let people go in, search for the people that they knew, and pull down those photos and then download them. And he said, he's not much of a coder, so things that you can do relatively easily. They've also got other tools, Textract, Transcribe. It's transcribing your audio. Sort of played with that a little bit with our AWS User Group podcast and found like it sort of works. Got a little bit of way to go, but a lot of these things are actually really hard to do. So better than trying to type it all out yourself. We've also got tools like Code Whisperer. That's AWS's version of sort of Copilot. One really cool thing for people that have Macs is they've also got a Mac version of that, so you can install it, and Code Whisperer will work on your in your terminal sessions and the like. So it's cool little things there. Code Whisperer ties in with a whole bunch of different IDEs, including VS Code, and then sort of one that's been around for quite some time is Lex. That's your conversational AI interface. If anyone's got an Alexa, that's what sits at the back of your Alexa to talk to you. So there's a lot of tools there that AWS has, which range from your SageMaker, your really in-depth, to a lot of tools that are just really easy to sort of get into and have a bit of a play with. And just recently, Bedrock. So I won't go into that too much, but Hilton covered that. That's Amazon's Gen AI tool. All right, so I had two options that I could go down with my talk, either some more technical or something that was sort of a bit more fun. So let's just show of hands. Who wants more of a sort of a dry, technical type talk? Who wants fun? That can possibly net you a share of $120,000 in US. Right? I think for those that are watching at home, there are a lot more hands for the fun, which is good because I actually only produce slides for that. All right, so some of the fun tools that they've got. Who has heard of AWS Deep Racer? Yeah, so there's a fair few hands up there. This is really cool, little ML-based autonomous racer. It's a way, something that AWS came out with to help with people get to know and play with reinforcement learning. They've got a whole bunch of Deep Racer leagues. And basically what they do, they've got a big track, and the idea is to run your car around that track as fast as possible without going off and learning how to turn the corners and all those sorts of things. There's a 3D simulator version as well, because the tracks take up a lot of room, and if you're playing around with this in the office. You don't want to have a football field. So that's one of the fun tools that they've got. And if you go down to AWS Summit, a lot of the big AWS events, you'll generally see that there'll be deep racer tracks around. So cool to go and watch. Even jump on YouTube and you can see some of the competitions there. But one of the new ones that AWS has just released, only a couple of months old, is AWS Party Rock. It says here it's a no-code interface to AWS Bedrock. You get sort of free initial access. It's designed as a way to sort of get people into easily building generative AI applications and using Bedrock. And right now, I think it finishes the 12th of March. They're running a hackathon where you can win up to $120,000 in prizes. Predominantly AWS credits, but also some US dollars in cash. All right, that's my slides. Now, let's have a look at something a bit more interactive. Yeah, okay. Not now. So, how do we get to Party Rock? Really difficult. partyrock.aws. All right, so this is what your interface looks like. It's super, obviously they got the best designers in the world to come up with this, or maybe not. All right, so if you want information on the hackathon, it's right in here. Click the link to learn more. And there's also a whole bunch of apps and things that you can already try out. Okay, that's all cool. How do we get started? Is it really difficult? Do you need credits? Nope. Click on sign in and join the party. So let's sign in with Google. I've just created a brand new Google account, something that hasn't been used before. All right. Super simple. Authenticate in. All right, so when you first come in, you do need to create a username. So let's go. Hopefully that hasn't been taken. Sweet. All right, let's place a dot at the end of the cast path. Yeah, here we go. Oh. Yeah, choose all the beds. Is that one a bed or a radio? Who knows? I think it's a radio. Hey, and I'm in. All right, so relatively simple if you can get through the through the authentication prompts. All right, so yeah. All right, looks not too dissimilar to the non-logged in. Hey, got a little smiley face. All right, so you'll see you've got a couple of things at the top. So let's go to apps. This shows you all the apps that you've got. Obviously here I've got nothing. And Discover gives you an interface to, these are some of the apps that people have already created. So let's just go first off. Oh, and I think under here, if you click on your little smiley face, right, this shows you how many credits you've got, right? So it's pretty much free, and I've played around a fair bit with this, and generally haven't got my credit usage up more than about 3%. So, you can actually play around quite a bit in the free tier, and if you use it all up, just create a new account. So let's have a look at, first off, some of the ones that have already been created. Right, so, good eats. Now, I will say as well that, these apps and things aren't works of art, but they're designed to sort of give you a bit of a feel for what you can do with generative AI apps. In this case, how you can easily create something that's a bit of fun, so forth. All right, so this session here is going to be interactive. So, all right, for those playing at home and may not be able to hear the audience, bit of bad luck. So first off, let's start off. Someone give me a location. You. Williamstown. Okay. Town. All right. Give me a cuisine. Okay, you with the white shirt. Italian? And you'll see, did I spell that correctly? I can't, no. Italian. All right, you can see as I'm typing in these fields as well, this main body is already starting to update and fill out. All right, and let's just stay with dinner. All right, so you can see there's a couple of different sections in this particular app. All right, we've got a couple of boxes where we're entering questions in. We've got a box here which gives us a whole bunch of recommendations. And in this one too, we've also got a chat box in here. So let's just try and see. Yeah, actually it will be. That's all right. If I had, let's just try. And just see if that comes up with. Right, and then you've got, your other chat there. So let's just give this a try. All right, so there we go. Can't, pop in more info and works like that. All right, so that's cool. This has already been created. Awesome. But what can we do with these things? We can see, we can show configurations here. But one of the cool things, if we really like this app, hey, this is cool, but I want to sort of play around myself a bit. All right, you've got a remix option here. So if I click remix, all right, see, app remix successfully. Now if I go into the apps, which are my apps, all right, this comes in here. So now this gives us options to edit. And the cool thing about edit, if you find something that you sort of like, now this gives you the option to go in and have a look at all of the different widgets that are there. So this is widget title, it's called welcome. There's the context, it's got the text there. All right, cool. This was a basic text box. All right. What about these? All right, this one gives us a title, placeholder, default value if you want. But this one is a text widget that we can enter information. Now this is then where we pull up the widgets that actually go to the LLM. And what this one is doing, as we can see, info there is generating as soon as location, cuisine, and meal are filled. And again, we can have a look at the options there. Right, and this chatbot, again, so this one actually asks us for the model that we want to use. Right, the initial settings there, and the prompt, which will sort of start us off. Right, so this is a really simple way to have a bit of a play with AI. All right, so that's one that's already exists that we've had a look at. Build your own app, all right? Okay, so someone give me, what sort of an app do we want to build? Come on, interactive. That means you talk to me.
Weather.
Sorry?
Weather.
A weather app? Okay, what sort of weather app? Let's give it a few more things.
Sophia weather warning.
Yep, okay. Let's just see what we get. Actually, that probably won't really work as a view weather warning app because we want it's something to talk. Yep.
Precipitation and wind strength.
Yep. Actually, probably, again, as we were saying, like the thing with your large language models is like they're based on data that has been old. So some of those things that like on current things won't really work all that well.
Historical averages?
Sorry?
Historical averages?
Yeah, so something like that. Here we go, tells me. All right, let's see what that gives us. All right, so there's also two ways that you can go in here. This way, like you're actually using a large language model prompt to generate a Gen AI application for you. You can also just jump in with a blank screen and enter those boxes that you want yourself. All right, so let's have a look at this. Someone give me a location. Right. All right, let's see what that comes up with. Yeah, so this gives us a quick little and with just that little prompt that we had before, hey, we've got a little app that tells us the historical weather. Let's just try. Right, so and here we go. Right, so again, like this is, just I think a really cool, fun little tool that AWS has. It's super easy to get into. one of the things that I like, as you can see here, the coloring and the UI and all that leaves a lot to be desired. But for a free tool that's fun, it's quite interesting. And then you can jump into, like you can have a look at that. So it tells you the large language model that it's using. We can retry different things if you've got, say like, this type of thing especially works for, say, like your food suggestions or, hey, give me some holiday vacation destinations, or, you can retry and get some different answers. And you can have a look in to sort of see what some of the underlying parts are. And, you've got some different settings here, sort of your temperature and top P there. So these are things that will give you, you can have a bit of a play, give you some ideas, and then when you jump into Bedrock, you've already got a bit of an idea on like, okay, what do these tools sort of give? What am I going to see if I jump into Bedrock and do some stuff? And then, you can play a bit more in the Bedrock playgrounds like Hilton showed us. So yeah, we're starting to get just past the 8 o'clock, so I'll wrap this up. But yeah, in general, I'd say to everyone, jump on. Like, you saw how difficult it was to sign up. Use your Google or account. Yep. Oh, hang on. We'll just wait for the.
Thanks for on. Okay, I've got two related questions. The first one is, does Bedrock support Unicode characters like Chinese character, Japanese character? The second one is, I understand those language models support French, but do they support Asian language like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, things like that?
Okay, with Party Rock, at the moment, I'm pretty sure it's only English support right now. So that's just this app. For the large language models, you'd have to jump into Bedrock and have a look at some of the doco there and see what they've got. Yeah.
I know we're only out, so we'll be quick. Can I upload images or have this retrieve an image as part of my Party Rock?
I've not seen anything on here about uploading images, but one of the things, this also will tie into Stable Diffusion. So, like you saw the sort of the crappy images that I had in my presentation before. They were all, I just jumped in here and said, give me an image generation application. And then I used the Party Rock app to generate the images using Stable Diffusion. So again, one of the things with Party Rock, it's designed as sort of a guide. So even though it will use Stable Diffusion and it sort of will put in some prompts, you don't get a whole lot of options to change. You do get a seed and a couple of other things that you can do. So
I couldn't feed it a URL that links to a PNG or a JPEG or something like that?
Not that I've seen, but I've only played a little bit with this at the moment. And if I go down the ears documentation, here, if we want to read the Party Rock guide. So this will give you a whole lot of extra information. As I said, it will link into Stable Diffusion to generate images, but I haven't seen a widget to insert images. There's only a few widgets that it has. So this is it. So you've got a text generation widget, your chatbot, image generation, user input, static text. So it can generate, but you can't import an image with this app. Again, it's sort of designed to get you into generative AI and have a bit of a play. And then from there, you can actually like jump into Bedrock and do some more with that. So yeah. All right. Yeah. So yeah, I just finish off with saying, jump on, have a play, enjoy, and remember there is the hackathon. So I'd say two things with that. Number one, have a go, see what you can do, and maybe win some money. But number two, I'd say also have a look when it finishes up and see what people come out with. That's one of the things I'm sort of interested to see what else people come up with in the hackathon. Cool. Thank you.
Also, quick 10-second side note on the hackathon. There is also a component there for anybody who is half decent at blog writing. There is, I think, a $250 AWS credit up for grabs for the first 152 people to build a party rock app and post a blog about it on the AWS is it the AWS Dev blog or something? So have a look on the hackathon page. Their details are all on there. I was having a look last night, and it did not look like there was anywhere near 152 blogs that had been posted yet. So you probably still got a chance. All right, with all of that out of the way, is anybody looking to hire? Anybody looking for people at the moment? Oh, cool. All right, well, that was a very short market segment. Boom. And with that, we're going to call that a night. So a big thank you to Hilton and to Jason for presenting. And thank you to our sponsors, our gold sponsor, Mantel Group, our silver sponsor, Sevo, and our venue sponsor, NAB. Without your continued support, these events wouldn't be possible. Next user group is 27th of March, same place, same time, 6 o'clock for a 6:30 start if you're here in person, 6:30 if you're watching us on YouTube. As I said before, any questions, queries, concerns, thoughts, or issues, feel free to reach out to Rob, Jason, or myself, or hit us up on Slack or LinkedIn. And with that, I will bid you all adieu. I think we've got to be out of here in 10, 15 minutes, so might want to, yeah. If there are any meals in the back of the room that are still there, feel free to take them. Any bottled water. There's one. First in, take it. There's a couple of bottles of water and that there as well. Feel free to take them. Otherwise, I've got to lug them back to the car and it's too hot to do that. So go nuts. And with that, have a good night.